I want to take a few moments of your time to tell everyone about Military Broadcast Radio, or MBR for short, a veterans radio station in Boulder, Colorado that helps with podcast and media training for disabled and transitioning veterans looking for a way to give voice to what's on their minds. They also provide support for those veterans in need through direct support or veterans help organizations. They can be found on the internet at www.mbradio.us and on social media through their YouTube channel, MB Radio, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and Rumble. MBR Radio is a nonprofit and relies strictly on corporate donors and viewers who subscribe and like the shows. If you wish to donate, please visit their website and check the Sponsor or Donate tab. However you decide to support this program, it is all greatly appreciated by all the veterans who contribute to the programming on this station. I thank you on behalf of MBR Radio for listening to this. Gefällt 1,000 welcomes to the Village Oak Tree for June 19th, 2024. I'm your host, Terrence O'Donnell, and thank you to everyone for who's watching or listening joining us today. I have another discussion amongst friends today, this time with an addition to the commentary team. Not only do I have my friend Mitch back again, so I think this is going to be a regular thing, I have our new friend, Miss Frances Chiu, and a very astute political analyst. And I must note, a Bernie Sanders fan, which I'm all about. So with that, let me bring them up here, and we can get this show started. So, how is everybody?
I'm doing well, but I'm noticing a little challenge.
Uh-oh, what kind of challenge?
I'm not seeing Francis.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Yep.
There we go.
So let's talk about what's going on in the news right now. So as Mitch and I talked about last week, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Okay. Not really. That's not true, but it's got everybody scared. I mean, right now.
They're in Cuba now, right?
Well, you know, it's like we talked about last week. There was a scheduled port visit. I mean, I'm career military. I know all about the port visits. I mean, they're planned like months in advance. So it's not a big surprise as far as that goes. As far as the Russians is concerned, Havana has been a port, an R&R port for their fleet for decades. So that's not that big of a deal. It's just the timing. With everything that's going on right now with the U.S., it's rattling sabers over there really, really hard right now. It's like, okay, but as they mentioned here, and like Mitch and I watch all of these independent journalists on YouTube here a lot, and we watch the same ones. And the big thing is what they're telling us right now is that they have conventional weapons, but that's a normal loadout. It's nothing special. They're just doing war games off into the Caribbean Ocean and out in the Atlantic. Normal stuff. So everybody's getting all excited about nothing. On the other hand, Russia is basically still, regardless.
Did we lose each other?
No, we're good. But like I said, Russia is still letting us know that, hey, we're here. And yes, we can do things. So, you got to quit. And now, as of a couple of days ago, Putin has once again come out in the news and said, hey, I'm willing to talk terms here to stop all of this. And now we're waiting to see what's going to happen. Of course, Zelensky is saying, no, we're going to keep fighting. Well, you got nothing to fight with, dude. Stand down. Let it go. Go home. Stop all that.
Zelensky is trying to draw us into a wider war, I think. He knows that he's going to go down, I think, and he can't win. So the only hope he has is to draw the US/NATO in. And he's going to do whatever he has to do that. What do you think, Francis?
Maybe.
I don't think she's hearing us. Go on again.
Looks like her. we may lose her again.
Yeah, it's possible.
All right. So, Will, let's carry on. So I agree. The big thing is it's one of those deals where I think the U.S. needs to figure out what their next move is.
Mhm.
I don't see any good answers here. I truly don't. Okay, because I mean the thing is, it's getting worse. Just to give you an idea, that right now the U.S. is becoming persona non grata in a whole lot of places around the world.
Mhm.
A lot of it having to do with this business over in Eastern Europe, and a lot of it has to do with the support in Gaza. Just to give you an idea, I picked up a news article here from Al Jazeera here about a week ago. Attacks on U.S.-linked businesses rattle Baghdad in anger as Gaza surges. So basically what that's saying is that places like Baghdad, McDonald's is getting attacked by local people because they're an American business. Okay.
I saw Coca-Cola getting some flack, I think, in Indonesia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's interesting that these large cap companies are losing business.
They are. So what's going to happen? Of course, we all know what corporations do, especially more American ones. Well, looks like we lost her altogether. But the big thing is we know what they do. Okay. They cry and whine to their congressional representatives and say, well, it was me. We're being picked on over here. You need to do something. And some congressman gets all upset and tries to do something wherever and makes a big noise in the news and so on and so forth. I mean, we've seen this time and time and again over the years. So, I mean, this is not going to be any different. The fact that Iraq especially wants us out of there altogether, this is the start.
And then you see the tariffs that they're trying to impose. I'm guessing that's what the business lobby has managed to get our government to do.
Oh, sure. Well, it's protectionism.
But it's not working.
Nope. It's having the opposite. It's having the opposite. And a big thing here for like China, for example, which has been all over the news the last couple of weeks or so with this business, is the EU picked up on it and said, hey, we're going to do tariffs too because China's flooding us with EVs. And I'm like, well, okay. As I said last week, a modest tariff, say 25%, is not that bad of a deal. Okay. It's actually somewhat expected. Okay. So fine, levy that. And China probably won't even bat an eyeball. And
right.
Are being stupid, and we're not going to go down that road. We already know they're just being stupid. But the problem is, how much is the EU going to copy the Americans here?
Do they have a choice, though? Can they afford to not follow the Americans? I mean, go ahead.
Again, it all depends on what they want here. They have to weigh. They got to weigh it out. On one hand, and I've been saying this for a long time, the EU needs to learn to stand up for themselves. Okay. Now, I do not like Donald Trump. I'll say that right straight up and now. But he did have, whether they were his ideas or not, he did have some good ideas back when he was president. He did tell the EU, hey, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to start doing more for yourself. Don't depend on the U.S. so much. And I totally agree with that. Okay. I think the EU needs to stand up for themselves a little more. Quit being so dependent on the United States, because the United States may not always be there for them. And I'm not saying just because the U.S. is going to drop out of NATO. It's just a fact that our economy is having problems. So we may not be able to be there for them. It's not that they won't, not that we don't want to, we just may not be able to be there for them. So EU needs to kind of think about that and start learning to stand up for themselves. But here's the thing that I learned last week watching somebody else, was that the EU right now, without the US, doesn't have an anchor pin. Okay. By themselves, they are having issues with being cohesive together. And their council in the Netherlands and Belgium is having a lot of friction right now a part of it is the recent elections all over the place with all these right-wing factions getting involved and getting parliament seats and all kinds of stuff. That rattled a lot of cages.
Mm-hmm.
So they are thinking about all of that and trying to figure out what the next move is. So because they don't know what they want to do, they're kind of like, well, okay, U.S., whatever you're going to do is good for us.
We'll follow.
I'm sorry. And here's the other thing. I was reading this morning, and this goes back to the Ukraine thing. U.S. right now is using the EU as a proxy front. So whatever retaliation the Russians do for, it looks like she's dropped out. I don't know, but whatever the Russians.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Audio is, you're good. As long as you can hear us, we're all good. But as I said, if the Russians retaliate, they're going to retaliate.
I can hear
in
you.
Europe. Right? They're going to retaliate in Europe, Eastern Europe. Okay. So at that point, and like everybody's saying, they're not going to invoke Article 5. So it's a question of, all right, what's going to happen next? Well, hopefully they can back off and not get Russia to retaliate and blow up some of these bases in Eastern Poland and in Slovakia and other stuff. Hopefully it won't come to that. But right now, everybody's got their finger on the trigger. So it's only a matter of the slightest spark. And next thing you know.
Correct. Yeah. Everything goes up in flames.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I don't know. Francis, want to jump in?
By the way, I just want to say I can't hear you guys at times. I think I'm still having like browser issues. Sorry about that.
It's okay. That's okay. Well, then we will just carry.
I missed a lot of what you said a little earlier.
I'm sorry. All right, we'll do the best we can here. All right, so we're still having some IT problems with Francis, so it is what it is. We'll carry on.
Sometimes it gets fading in and out.
Right. Okay. Well, no worries. No worries. So there we are. So Ukraine right now is kind of like Putin is basically saying, listen, we want to come to the table. We want to end this. Okay. And Russia's got the upper hand. It's the West, and especially the U.S., that doesn't want to admit it. We got guys like Lindsey Graham, that Republican from South Carolina, who wants to nuke everybody. Tom Cotton out in Arkansas, same thing. These are the kind of guys that just need to go home.
But here's what I think. Is it that we cannot admit to defeat in Ukraine because that will trigger off a chain reaction of people around the world thinking that they can challenge the U.S.? What do you think?
Yes. In a nutshell, that's exactly what the Americans are thinking.
So they're going to go down with the ship and they're going to destroy the planet. Is that what they're going to do?
No. Truthfully, there are some saner heads in the Pentagon that won't let it go that far. I seriously doubt if there's any nukes going to be lobbied anywhere. Truthfully.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And, you and I both listen to guys like Scott Ritter and Colonel Wilkinson and all these other guys, and they're all saying the same thing. If anything is going to get lobbied across
borders, you guys.
Okay, sorry. But anyway, the big thing is if anything gets lobbied across borders, it's just going to be conventional stuff. Okay. Some of the zircons, some of the other ones, and they'll blow up a few staging areas over in East Poland, maybe, so on and so forth, and that'll be it. And that, the Americans have to figure out what they're going to do next. The Americans themselves, just on their own, if they back off, the Germans and the French and the English will all back off as well. See? Yeah. And that's the anchor right there. The Americans need to learn that, listen, you cannot beat the Russians in East Europe. You just can't. Okay?
And here's another thought. Is it that the Russians are deliberately drawing it up, knowing that our economy is collapsing behind us?
Yes.
That's a possibility, right?
Yeah. There is no. there's no doubt in my mind. So here's what we kind of know, okay? And I'm just gonna kind of say it, is that the Russians have spies in the United States.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay. The Russians have spies in the United States. We haven't found them all. The Israelis have spies in the United States. We haven't found them all. Okay. The Chinese have spies in the United States, and we haven't found them all. So whatever's going on in the US, everybody else in the world knows about it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just so, like you were just saying about the economy. They all know that our economy is entering a recession, and they all know that this recession is probably going to get very big here in the next couple of years. They know it, and they're just waiting. So I watched something else early this morning, and this one podcaster was saying that the Chinese economy is fixing to kind of burst their bubble. Their commercial real estate issues are seriously bad over there right now, and they're having a hard time trying to figure out what they're going to do about it. So I'm kind of curious, because obviously China being China, they're keeping really quiet about it. They obviously don't want anybody to know about it, because their economic strategy is to project that they are the greatest and they're doing really well, and so on and so forth. So obviously Beijing does not want anybody to know about this bubble bursting, and because that's going to send a lot of shockwaves everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Russia, on the other hand, is doing very well because they are able to sell oil using their shadow fleet and this new pipeline and everything going down to Iran and stuff and down to India. Well, that's all well and great. So, but it's a temporary thing. I mean, it's not short temporary, but it's kind of a temporary thing for now, because it still could be a stranglehold if somebody decided to really get in there and do it. It obviously would set off a lot of fireworks if somebody tried to strangle that off. But I have to wonder. Okay.
Well, the thing with China, though, just me thinking, there's no way to compare the Chinese economy to the U.S. economy, in that a lot of what they do can be centrally undone. So if they decided to bring everyone together to sort some economic catastrophe, they probably could.
Right.
We don't know the depths of what their economy can do, because it's not run the way ours is.
Right.
They have their own systems of managing things. So to say that the collapse of their real estate will be bad for them, maybe bad in some sectors, but they're still trading. They're still building.
Oh, yeah.
They've still built up, that machinery, and that's not going away.
No. Well, the big thing about it is you have to, I discount. I do know that China is having an issue with a lot of commercial developers over there. That's been going on for several months. Okay. They haven't really been quiet. They have been really real quiet about it. And, I've been watching this stuff for several months. So it's not new news as far as it goes. And I have to think that China, being the way they are, they've got a plan. They have a plan. And because they're not the West, they don't broadcast their plans. They just go and do stuff.
Yeah.
And it leaks out, And so I expect that whatever plan they have to bolster whatever's going on over there is going to do whatever it's going to do, and it eventually will leak out, and everybody will get a hold of it, and everybody be fine. Okay.
The other thing is, I saw the IMF projected that China will do 5% growth next year. This year. So, I mean, I'm not worried too much about their real estate.
Right.
They're still trucking.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Scott Ritter yesterday, and he was saying, when that submarine and the ships leave Cuba, they may be leaving some of those missiles behind. They'll be non-nuclear, but they're fast enough that nothing can stop them.
That's right. That's
and they
right.
Can probably hit anywhere on the east of the U.S.
Well, think about it. And, yesterday and the day before, we saw pictures of the Russian little Russian fleet that floated in there.
Yeah.
Some of those were supply ships. Okay. Yeah. So it's like you said, you have to know that they are probably offloading some things.
So what? Right. All right.
and we're not going to really know. Well, we might know what they are. Well, let's put it this way. The Pentagon will find out what they are. All right. Now we won't know because they're going to keep that a big top secret.
Mhm.
And Pentagon's probably going into panic mode. I mean, I read this morning in the news that there's a Canadian frigate down there shadowing the Russians in Havana Harbor. So I have to wonder, is this another one of those deals where the United States made a phone call to Ottawa and said, hey, you need to send somebody down there. We don't have any assets down here right now. Can you send one of yours down there?
Right.
I mean, that's typical. And it goes back to this whole thing in Eastern Europe. The United States right now does not want any kind of footing anywhere. They don't want a direct confrontation, period, especially with the Russians. So they're sending their boys, the Canadians, the Ukrainians, and whoever else. And in this case, in Europe, the U.S. is fine with the Germans and the French sending their troops into Ukraine and getting them wiped out.
Yeah.
They're okay with that. As long as no American troops get killed, we don't care. I mean, so you have to know the Europeans got to be thinking about that.
Well, their countries are being deindustrialized, right? They're losing money. The population is restive. Cost of production is going up. Inflation is going up. How long can they hold up? That's why the right wing is getting popularity all over Europe.
Right.
Because
here in the U.S. too.
Yeah. So and there's no way to stop these guys from continuing down a path that seems to end in war.
Well, the big thing about it, as far as war goes, the war is already there. The big thing about this, it's like everybody keeps saying, and it goes back to Gaza too. Okay. Mm-hmm. One phone call from the White House here in the United States could stop all of this.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All Biden would have to do is tell Zelensky over there, okay, it's over. All right. Make a deal. That's all he has to do. One phone call. Hey, you're done. Make a deal. Okay. We're out of it. He could do the same thing with Israel. Make a phone call. Say, hey, we're not giving you any more toys. Okay. Figure it out. All right. Mm-hmm. You need to abide by this ceasefire agreement or else.
Correct.
And that's all he has to do. But
that they don't want to.
Well, that's the issue. Okay. I have this really, really bad feeling that Biden somehow, and I said something about this to somebody here recently, that Biden is probably got some dirt hanging over the top of him that Mossad gathered up from him here. Biden's been in politics, been in the political scene since 1970. Okay.
Correct.
That's a lot of decades for the Mossad agents to collect compromat on the Biden and the Biden family. And not just him, but every senator out there and every representative that has an Israeli handler. The only reason they have a handler is because these people have dirt on these guys. They would lose their jobs in Congress if the stuff ever got leaked out. And these Israeli handlers are there to let them know, hey, we got your number. You either toe the line or we're going to leak this stuff and you're going to be out of a job.
Yep. So that constant contact is why they have handlers. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yes, Francis.
I mean, the thing is, okay, no sound.
Poor thing.
I do. I feel bad. But here's the thing. The Israelis have been in this country for decades. Back in the 80s, they caught a handful of them, spanked them, sent them back to Israel. It was all in the news. I remember that.
Okay.
And so you have to know that it's like an ant. It's like you see one ant in your house. If you see one on your floor, you know that there's a bunch more in your walls. Okay. Yeah. So just because you got rid of two,
yes,
you know that they're out there. Okay. You just haven't found them all. Right. And because of the relationship with the Israeli government and the lobby and all this kind of stuff. It's one of those deals where the only time they spank these guys is when they get caught doing something really egregious and it makes the news, so they've got no choice, okay? But as long as they behave themselves and just spy without letting everybody know what's going on, well, hey, all's good, all right? Meanwhile, all of our congressional representatives and senators have Israeli handlers.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, did you see Hillary Clinton?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she's another one.
I mean, she's backing. I think. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched.
Yeah, she's backing. I think Jamal Bowman.
No.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing it. She's not backing Jamal Bowman. His competitor.
No, his opponent.
Right.
George Latimer or something like
that. Is that what it is? Yeah, I didn't catch the name. Yeah, I watched him do an interview with.
He's like some kind of Westchester executive.
Well, there you go. There's the money. You know, I always tell everybody, you want to know what's wrong with things, follow the money.
Follow the money.
Okay, it always leads to the crooks, and they come in all shapes and sizes and flavors. You know, and that's the whole thing about this mess we have in the United States, and it's going to bring us down. Okay, we have legislatures in both the state and the federal offices who are grifters. All they're doing is they go to work every day with their hand out, looking for campaign donors to grease their palms, and that's how they make their livelihood. Okay, you know, I've said this for years that the United States.
Yeah. Well, it's all the money in politics.
Yeah, they ought to roll all that back. You know, back is an old story, and it goes back a couple hundred years. So you guys remember a famous American by the name of Davy Crockett? All right.
Yeah, back in the day.
So back once before Davy Crockett went to Texas, he was an actual congressman from the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
Now, back in those days, these guys didn't get paid a salary by the federal government. They got paid by the states and the districts they represented. And it wasn't a very big salary. It basically was just an expense account. It paid their way to get up to Washington, D.C., and it paid for their lodgings once they got up there. But the rest of it come out of their pocket. Okay. And they only got paid when they traveled from their state up to Washington. And then they had to turn in basically an expense account sheet when they got home. And that's how that worked. Well, why don't we go back to that? That would solve a lot of problems. You know what?
One of the reasons why they don't do that is because, and it's the same thing in England as well, too. Yeah. The only thing is this, though, they think that the reason why they did that, I mean, decided to start paying, you know, the senators, congressmen, whatever, is because they thought that would only that if you had no income, it would only limit it to the wealthiest people. That's why they started paying them.
Yeah, well, look how that worked out.
Because only they would have the funds. I mean, you think about something like Trump, for instance. Yeah.
Well, you know, the big thing is, I'm okay with paying these guys. Don't get me wrong, but I think the states should pay for it, not the federal government. Yeah. Okay. My thinking is, if you come from a rural, very poor district, then your salary is paid by that, whatever your constituency is. And it's whatever they can afford. Okay. So yes, there would be a wealth disparity between, say, a congressional representative or senator from New York, for example, versus somebody from rural Tennessee. All right. I get that. But here's the thing. There's a disparity also between the donor system. Okay. That needs to go away. You know, if these guys got a flat rate salary, whether the feds paid them, or the
that's
states
the
paid
biggest
them,
issue.
Yeah. See, and that's just it. They should lock these guys out from that stuff.
I mean, like, for instance,
You know, I know.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue. Is that, you know, that it's the campaign donations. I mean, starting with, like, you know, Citizens United.
Well, it's not even just campaign donations. I mean, these guys are taking money under the table from the guys in their districts. I I mean, yes, they label it campaign donors.
Mm-hmm.
And, Menendez in New York just got nailed for bribery, but he still wants to run for office again.
And he might win.
And he might win. Okay. But it just goes to show you the mentality of this stuff. Right. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This whole business of being a convicted felon and still being able to hold office, to me, it's like seriously wrong. Okay. I mean, a convicted felon can't vote.
Well,
so if you can't vote, how can you be an elected official?
Yeah, precisely.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, the way I looked at it was like they shouldn't even. I mean, anyone who's under FBI investigation. I mean, like starting in 2016, should not have been able to run, and that includes actually not just Trump but Hillary as well too.
Oh yeah,
because she was under investigation.
Hillary and her family got all jacked up with that Whitewater scandal out of Arkansas, which is why they're not welcome in Arkansas anymore. Okay. And, and that was the whole thing. And that's where Bill Clinton got his nickname, Slick Willie, because when he was in office over in Arkansas, all right, he got away with so much on a personal level, and, on a, how would you call it? Official level and a lot of things. He did a lot of really bad things when he was Attorney General in Arkansas, as far as graft and everything else. And he sort of kind of got away with it, but they just basically told him, okay, we really can't pin you down for this, but you need to leave. We don't want you back. And they haven't been back since. So now they set up shop in New York, and, we see what the result was. Back in 2016, I had no problem at all with not voting for Hillary Clinton. But the problem is a choice was taken away from us. Okay. And like we are right now in 2024, again, here we are. We don't want to vote for Biden. We don't want to vote for Trump, but the choices are being taken away from us. And it's all about the money. Where these guys go is where the money is. And with Biden, he's, if anybody watched any of his news videos from when he was at D-Day here a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't know where he's at half the time. Okay.
So when he turned around and the whole crowd had to turn with him.
Well, not only that, what was her name? The Italian PM had to grab him by the arm and say, "Hey, we're over here."
When he wandered off, I saw that.
He was wandering off looking at the parachuters. And I'm like,
and by the way, if you even point this out, they would tell you, "Oh, you must be a Trump supporter." I have been getting a lot of that on my article.
All right.
It's like we have such an either-or mentality. It's like you can't even point out that he has. I mean, I'm sorry, the man has dementia, just like Trump does. Both of them. But somehow, if you point out that that Biden has dementia, oh no, you're a Trump supporter. I mean, it is just insane. Well, I mean, I think the problem is it's also the political discourse too.
Right. Well, it's all about not Biden per se. It's all about his people. Okay. They don't really care.
Oh yeah, definitely.
As long as he's in power, they're in power. Because they know that if he's out of office, they're out of office. And that's what it all boils down to. And it's the same thing when Reagan was president. Reagan's last 2 years in office, Nancy was the president. Okay? Because he was a drooling idiot. And everybody knew it. But they tried to hide it. And she was running the government. Right? She was calling all the shots. The only problem was that she had her pet astrologer telling her what decisions to make. And that made it in the news ever so briefly, and then they shut that down.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, it goes to show you that, again, it all comes down to the money. The people in power need a figurehead, whether it's somebody, a drooling idiot like Ronnie Reagan, or a doddering old fool like Joe Biden, or an absolute idiot like Donald Trump. Okay?
Well, the thing is this, like, I mean, the thing is this, though. Biden was actually only supposed to be here for that one term. He even said that he was not going to run again. Right. And then someone, I don't know if it was he or someone else, said, "Oh no, you should run again." And they also tried to limit the in fact, I didn't even think that there was going to be any primaries this year. I mean, just not that there were no primaries literally, but just the fact that that he was running uncontested, except maybe for Marianne Williamson and that guy Dean Phillips. That was about it. But I thought, God. he just really, I'm sorry, he is not viable. Neither the, it's just really, I think it's a matter of like when he's going to collapse.
Right.
When he takes
right.
office. That's what it feels like, at least, because he just obviously does not know what's going on.
Here's the question.
But God forbid you even point it out.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the question, though. And this is what everybody's scared of. Is Kamala Harris ready to take the reins? Well, truth be told, I think she is. Everybody's afraid of her. But I don't know. I mean, she's tried really hard to kind of make a name for herself a little bit. But as we all know, vice presidents here in the United States are supposed to be there in name only. You sit in the corner and you shut up and do as we tell you. And that's typically the vice president's job. You go out there, wave your hand, wave the flag, go where we tell you to go,
even
say what we tell you to say. Yeah. Okay. I mean, anybody remember what happened when Tricky
well, the
Dick
thing
Nixon?
with Kamala Harris, she was never popular to begin with, though. She was never popular. I mean, she didn't even make it in her own. She dropped up before a state primary. When she was in her state primary, like when her name was, she was like, I think she was like third place or even fourth place.
Yep.
So I mean, like she was already a weak candidate to begin with.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the only reason she's on there with Joe is because she makes good eye candy. And I'm not saying that in a sexist way. I'm saying he needed a female vice president at the time.
Yeah.
And this time around, he didn't want to rock the boat, so he kept her on. Okay. And that's the only reason he's doing that. He doesn't want to rock the boat. And the only reason Biden agreed to do this second 4 years is because of Donald Trump. Everybody's afraid of Donald Trump, and they have every right to be. But at the same time, Biden seemed to think that only he could be the hero and save the day from Donald Trump. I'm like, okay, well, no. But again, the Democratic National Party decided that, okay, we got an incumbent. He's our best option for president. We don't want to rock the boat. Okay, well, now you just may have cost yourself the election.
I think so. I mean, if Biden...
I think I've lost the sound.
Oh my!
No, sound is good. Video's a little froze up.
But if the Democrats are really afraid of Biden, I mean, wouldn't they be listening to the people that are saying, hey, he's doing some things wrong?
Well, see, that's just it. That's what happens when you have a figurehead who basically is not capable of making really good decisions. Okay? Then you got all these minions running around behind him, all arguing about, all right, what do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now? Okay? So now that's basically what's going on. You got a guy like Admiral, retired Admiral Kirby, who's an idiot. And we have Anthony Blinken, who's another idiot. Okay? And these guys are basically propping Joe Biden up, saying, hey, you know what? You need to sign this, sign this, sign this. And Joe probably doesn't know what he's signing anymore.
Oh, my. Yeah, he really looks lost.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Him and his wife need to go to Delaware and just forget all about this. Okay? They just need to go home. But the problem is the Democrats, they had an opportunity 2 years ago to actually spin somebody up. And no, it wasn't Marianne Williamson, but there are other viable Democratic candidates that could have stepped in, but the DNC said, oh, no, it's got to be Joe Biden. Got to be Joe Biden. I mean, they were floating around the idea of Gavin Newsom out of California.
I saw that.
Okay. And
they were
he would have been fine.
That.
A lot of people would have been on board with that, but then they vetoed that. And Newsom, I think, didn't want to play the game. He was willing to be a candidate, but on his terms. And Washington said, no, you do this, it's going to be on our terms. And I think that's where the negotiations broke down. And it goes the same for, there's a couple other guys. They probably
my hunch is this. I have always thought that the reason why they wanted to pick Biden. Okay. I can't hear you.
We're hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me right now, by the way?
Yep. Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to say this. I think the reason why they ran Biden again is, in a way, they probably didn't want the prospect of Bernie running again. And I think that they chose Biden specifically so that they knew that he would say, oh, I'm not going to run against my good friend Biden. I think that's what was part of it, at least.
Part of it. Well, the other part of it is Bernie said himself that he's too old. He doesn't want to, at his age, he doesn't want to deal with all the
But
stress.
yeah, I mean, he probably, yeah. Even though, I mean, it's kind of sad because in a way, if you think about it, Bernie is probably more alert than either Trump or Biden.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
His age.
Without a doubt. But at the same, but the thing is, the fact that he came right out and said that, hey, I'm, you know, I don't think I can cut it. I'm too old. He's actually smarter than they are because he's willing to admit it. You know, and that's part of the problem. But again, you know, the Democrats shot themselves in the foot. They had opportunities, all kinds of, in 2023 to spin somebody up and say, hey, Joe, you know what? We like you, but I think it's time for you to go home. We got this somebody, you know, and they could have done that. They could have found somebody, but no.
I have a question. I mean,
so remember that in the primaries, in the first 3 primaries, Bernie was actually running for. I mean, he was in first place. Yep.
Yeah, I would have voted for Bernie, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
because you know the thing is, like, in what? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I was saying I would have voted for Bernie.
A lot of
I missed that. Sorry, yeah. Mitch was saying something.
I would have voted for Bernie. I'm guessing her audio is out again.
Her internet is flaking out again, I think.
Yeah. But what I wanted to ask is it the Democratic Party then? If we're saying that Biden is incompetent, is it the Democratic Party that is coming out with all of these unpopular decisions?
No.
Was abroad. Go ahead.
So here's what I will tell you, and this is part of part of my lectures on the failing of the American empire. They keep saying that the United States is a liberal democracy. And I argue that no, it's never been a liberal democracy. Okay. It was started by a bunch of really wealthy landowners, and they went to Philadelphia, got together, said, hey, we're going to create our own, you know, we don't want to be paying taxes to King George, yada, yada, yada. And they created this new thing. Well, they're all rich landowners for the most part. Most of them were slave owners and so on and so forth. But the big thing about that
that's why the Constitution wasn't. I mean, that's why they was the Constitution.
Right. Well, that was the point about the Constitution, which is a good thing. Then they published the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, and that was a good thing.
Well, kind of yes and no. They actually.
Go ahead.
Actually, it's interesting because with the Constitution, they actually did this because they wanted people to pay back the war debts. And then they started, right. There were riots throughout Massachusetts, and I think actually quite a few states. Like, that's when you had Shays Rebellion. And the founding fathers did not want another Shays Rebellion. So we got to have a new, the new system. It was actually worse than what they had was the British. They were more oppressive than the British. So it's kind of interesting to see that.
All right. Well, and it goes back to what I was saying. Being labeled as a republic was probably more accurate than a liberal democracy. Okay. Because initially everything was run by rich, wealthy landowners. And like she said, they did not want people revolting. And they basically said, hey, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to, if you want to revolt, go west, young man. Even back in the early days, of course, they were already going west. But the big thing about it was they just shoved them out west and said, all right, go out into the trees, yell and scream out there all you want to. We don't want to hear it in Boston, New York, and everywhere else. And of course, the South was doing their own thing by this time. And it kind of went from there. But the big thing is we've been a pseudo democracy since the inception of this whole American experiment. And now it's failing. Okay.
Right.
The experiment has come to it's coming to an ignominious end here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. The only bad thing about it is those of us
Yeah.
who are what I call the average American citizens here, we're going to pay the price for it. And all these rich guys that are running around Washington,
Yeah, unfortunately.
they're gonna be headed for the hills as soon as everything collapses. They're gonna be like rats leaving a sinking ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you're saying that the old guys are running away, but what they're doing as they're leaving, I'm seeing they're trying to bring back the traffic.
I mean, like, look at Biden propping up the credit card industry. And I mean, he was who came up with all the, the plans. Sorry.
Go ahead. I think there was a little delay. That's why.
Yeah, it's all right. Little lag. No worries. But you're right. The big thing is Biden, wanted to cancel the student debt. He wanted to put limits on the credit card industry, and the Justice Department basically has been shutting him down every which way but loose. So, there's the fight between the three branches of the government right now.
The interesting thing, he has only actually come up with that recently. That's not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fighting between the three branches.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he was.
So I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it's all going to end out, but the worst part is we have to worry about what the Republicans are going to do, because the MAGA cult right now has got a huge hold on those people, and any of the moderate Republicans are being shut down. And I'm not talking about Liz Cheney; she's past history. I'm talking about new ones right now. In the last couple of days, these guys are being shut out by all the shouting going on from guys like Johnson and everybody else. So I don't know. My worst worry, and this is something that Tom Hartman's been writing about and talking about in his radio show, is that all these people are running around saying they're going to revolt if Donald Trump doesn't become the next president. So I expect, to be honest with you, if Trump does lose, no matter how little or by how large, it doesn't really matter about the numbers. If he just loses, period, there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to start hitting the streets and turning cars over and burning buildings and doing all kinds of crazy stuff just because Trump is saying it's okay to do that. I mean, he's telling people now that I want you to fight for me. And, I'm using nice words. He's saying that, he said a lot of different kind of words, and he's telling these people, we're going to, it's going to be rigged. He's already telling people that before the election that the election is going to be rigged, and he's getting these people all spun out.
Yeah. Oh, I know that. Yeah.
I know. So you have to wonder how much more spin up is he going to be doing between now and November. And everybody is waiting for what Tom Hartman called the October surprise.
Well, the sad thing is,
Go ahead.
The sad thing is this, like Democrats have never taken action at all. No. And that's why we're in the sort of economic position that we're in.
Right. That's the worst part about it, is the Democrats have had lots of opportunities to shut this stuff off and, project their own narrative and stuff like that. And they've largely been sitting back and with the idea that, these people are just going to go away all by themselves. They're going to just fade away and so on and so forth. Well, guess what? You were wrong. Okay. They're not going away. And if anything, they're getting worse. So now
just to say, they've had the opportunity
to
spend money wisely.
The Democrats keep sliding to the right. That's one of the problems.
True. But that's because of the money.
But why can't they?
The Democrats have been moving more and more rightwards because they've been saying since Carter, we're going to pass Roe, and they've never passed Roe. I mean, they've never, tried to codify. That's what I mean. They've never tried to codify Roe. They always have an excuse.
Right. I mean, that's just it. The Democrats basically sat on their hands. They've just been moving,
further and further to the right. So they're not really addressing anything.
Yeah, they're not. And that's the whole thing about it. So now we have two political parties that are running the country, And in so many ways, they're all just alike. Okay. I mean, there's ideologically, they say they're different, but their actions speak louder than words. And their actions tell everybody, if you look hard enough.
I call them
that they are
Tweedledee
just
and
alike.
Tweedledum.
Yes. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly
Well, that's why I call
it.
them Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Right. And that's exactly it. Okay. And that's kind of where the whole thing is. My worry right now is that between whatever happens on November 5th, we're going to have riots in the streets between then and January. We have no idea who's going to be in charge of what. And it's scary to find out what's going to happen with the Democrats if they take over the White House again. Because, like, Mitch said, we don't know how long we don't know how long Joe Biden's going to last. I mean,
look at the fact that it took them so long.
Trump as well. I
to
mean,
address those
Trump keeps scarfing down them hamburgers. He's going to have a heart
waited
attack
for
in
so
office.
long.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of presidential hopefuls here who got health issues, and we don't know what's going to happen. And so Trump hasn't even picked a VP yet, so which is a little bit scary. So I'm like, all right, we don't know how that's going to work out. Secondly, we got to worry, is Biden going to end up like a Ronnie Reagan kind of scenario? I don't see his wife being a Nancy Reagan. I truly don't. I think she would step back if something happened to him and just let Kamala handle it. Of course, the worst part is, does she have enough backbone to stand up to Congress, the MAGA Congress, and that's the other part.
I did see Kamala come out with an interview.
I
carrying
doubt
on with
and they don't respect her either. That's what makes it worse.
Right.
Yeah. I think Kamala is towing the same line that Biden is towing.
Oh, sure.
With regard to Israel, for example, she's still bringing up stories that have been debunked. Stories of the rapes and all that. But she's having meetings to discuss it.
Well, that's why you picked her.
Yeah.
She's not gonna vary from that line, the Democratic line.
No, she won't. And that's a sad state of affairs. See, and that's what we're going to be faced with, no matter what. If the Democrats get elected again, which right now is iffy, we have to worry about what the party line continuing with more of the same, which is disastrous for everybody, or do we end up with the MAGA cult in charge, and we go from a slow with the Democrats. We're going to have a slow dive into nothing. Or if the MAGA cult gets in charge, we're going to hit the cliff in January and it's just going to be over the falls and it'll be quick.
Well, what I would like to ask you two guys is, how do you prepare for this economically? If you see it coming, what do you do?
Well, what the best thing to do is, one, get out of the stock market like right now. Okay. If you have any investments whatsoever in the stock market,
the thing is
get them out.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I know there are people predicting crash next year.
That's right. We're starting to see some of it now, but it's going to get really worse by next year. The other part of that is, there's things you can invest in. Everybody and their brothers, investing in gold for what it's worth, but that can be an expensive deal far as it goes. So it's all about what you want to do. Myself here, I'm prepping at home. I'm saving up food. I'm putting things aside. I've got solar panels on my house for when the lights go out, and they will. Okay. And I've taken my IRAs and invested them in gold. So I'm preparing, and, being a former soldier, I've got my bug out bag all prepped and stocked and ready to go. So if the stuff really, really hits the fan, then yes, I'm going to jump in my pickup truck and load it with bug out bags and defensive tools and hit the road.
Where would you go?
West.
That's an interesting direction. Okay.
Well, the big thing about it is you don't know where you're going to go until you see what's going on in front of you. So you have to, it's like going into a minefield. You sort of kind of know where the path is, but you really don't know where the mines are until you start stepping on some.
So I'm wondering if people should leave the country. Yeah. What do you think about that?
A lot of people are.
What do you think about
thousands of people immigrating to Mexico and in Europe right now.
What do you think, Francis? Would you leave or would you stay? I'm guessing too much of a lag.
Oh God. If I had a choice, if I had lots of money, I would go to England. That's what I would do.
Oh no.
But yeah, it's insane right now. And I think that actually, that's what this is. You know what I really blame the Dems in big part because they've just been sliding along to the right. They make all the decisions. And Democrats are just too chicken to ever push back. That's why we're at where we're at now.
Right. Well, listen, guys, it's 57 minutes, so I've got to cut this loose here. Okay. I want to thank my two guests today for joining me on the show. Mitch, as always, I appreciate you coming on. And our new collaborator, Miss Francis Chiu, with her technical problems, which I hope won't distract from the show too much. But I appreciate everybody coming in and joining up with us and tuning in. While I still have your attention, I want to tell you about how you can support this podcast and my efforts in general. This podcast will continue to remain free to subscribe to on all the major mobile podcast apps, on my YouTube channel, Krana Biha, and for the first 30 days on my Substack page, Krana Biha, The Tree of Life at Substack.com. With that in mind, I'm asking for donations of any amount. I decided that I would rather ask for donations instead of charging subscriptions, so everyone has an opportunity to watch or listen to this podcast everywhere in the world. All I'm asking for is help in defraying the cost to produce and distribute this podcast and maintain my website. I have set up a donation tab on the Village Oak Tree webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.kranabiha.com, which are all linked to PayPal for your security. This way you can use any currency you wish from around the world, providing PayPal is available to you. Any amount's appreciated. Now, about my website. The easiest way to find it is to copy it from the background behind me if you're watching this video. If you're listening to an audio version, copy the website name from the podcast logo shown. Search for it and enjoy your visit. Lastly, I'm trying to sell some copies of my book, Fugitives in the New United States, which can be found at major book retailers around the world, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Lulu. You can also buy from me direct through the bookstore page on my website. Fugitives in the New United States is available in hardcover, paperback, and digital form. Free if you're a Kindle subscriber. It's written for young adults and older, so it's safe. If this were a movie, it'd be rated PG. Look for Fugitives in the New United States at your favorite book retailer and enjoy it. If I sell enough, I'll find the time to write the second book in this series. So I want to thank you for your support, even if it's just a like and a subscribe on my social media accounts. Slancha, thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it and you'll return again next week for another episode of the Village Oak Tree. Please like, subscribe, and reply on the YouTube video or audio version. This helps with spreading the word about what I'm trying to do, which is to shout out to the world about all the bad things our governments are doing to us. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your hand always be stretched out in friendship and never in want. Slánga foil.